What looked like a great deal in the offing when Daniel Friedkin was set to save them from the increasingly frustrating web that they appear to be trapped in by Farhad Moshiri and 777 partners. It's turned out to be a deal that can't be completed at this stage. So Everton and Farhad Moshiri are basically back at square one when it comes to selling the football club. Not in crisis, but just back at square one. Their takeover talks have been called off after the two parties failed to finalise an agreement. The Friedkin Group, basically, he's understood that the major stumbling block has been a situation involving the previous prospective buyer, 777 Partners, who proposed the takeover plan, which had been backed by funding from insurance company ACAP. The 777 Group loaned Everton 200 million quid during their attempt to take over the club. The issue is not paying that back off, but the legal action that 777 finds itself in the US. And the Friedkin Group didn't know how long that is going to go on for, was unclear about who was in charge of the loan, because although 777 actually loaned Everton the money, the two guys at the top of 777 now have been removed from the football operation. So they decided to walk away, the Friedkin Group, because they couldn't wait for the issues to be resolved. Now, it may well be, and if I go back to the takeover of Roma, there was a little bit of a delay there and maybe a sort of, oh, it's over, it's not over. It could be a negotiating tactic. Could be that they're waiting to see what happens with 777, because it might be that they might not have to pay whoever it is who takes over Everton that £200 million back, depending on what the circumstances are surrounding the court cases, the several court cases that 777 are involved in.
Yeah, and I think that was more the issue, not so much that they owed 777 money, it was how long these court cases could take to come to fruition. But I think you're right to be a little bit dubious as to whether or not this is simply a negotiating tactic from Daniel Friedkin. I was told right at the start of the process when he first agreed a period of exclusivity with Farhad Moshiri, that actually it would be Friedkin who decided whether to progress with the deal or not, and maybe it is just a way of driving the price down. I think what we do know, and we've been saying this for some time, Moshiri's not going to make any money out of this sale. There's so many debts now attached to the football club. He just needs to find someone who's willing to service those debts, and he's going to have to go off into the sunset and pretty much just cut his losses. It's a shame, because I genuinely think Moshiri's intentions when he first became Everton owner were right. I think he was badly advised. He made some bad managerial appointments. He made some bad signings which have come back to haunt them. But if they can get through and find a new owner, the new stadium is coming on. I still think the future is bright for Everton. I agree with Darren McAntony. I don't think we're going to be in a situation where Everton end up in administration or in a situation where they can't find any owner. I think there are lots of suitors out there. I think the mood around the club has been punctured a little bit because of the fact that there was a bit of optimism. Daniel Friedkin is genuinely viewed as a very good owner for Roma. He's done good things there. And the idea that they were going to get an owner that has a track record in football, who's done a good job, coming in, helping them build from where they are going forward, I think filled them with optimism. The fact that that's now collapsed, or seems to have collapsed, has taken its toll a little bit, I think. And listen, the fan base gets very upset when there is any suggestion of problems at Everton, and I think that's because, you know, it's their football club. Totally right, I can understand that. But it is the second takeover deal to have collapsed in 2 months. And the crux of it appears to be the legacy of the proposed 777 takeover and the web, which seems to be too difficult, even for someone like Daniel Friedkin, who's got 6 billion quid to his name, to be able to untangle. And that just shows you that the Moshiri 77 web that they've sort of cast, I mean, go through it, you know, Andy Bell and George Downing were owed 160 million quid because they loaned the club 160 million quid. Friedkin paid that. Yeah. He paid that for the football club. That debt is now to Daniel Friedkin as a result of that. They owe £225 million to rights and media funding, also lent against the stadium. The Friedkin debt is held against the new stadium. Good job, that's completed. That's done now. You know, pretty much that's all finished, and all they need to do is just a bit of outfitting in the interior. But apart from that, that seems to have been almost completed. So that's good news for Everton, because that's a major asset to have. 777 had actually loaned Everton 200 million quid, which is accruing interest, but they can't negotiate their way out of it because the top brass, as I mentioned, have been removed, and the company who were the underwriters for 777 are in charge. You don't know how long that's going to go on for, and therefore how much eventually that loan is going to cost. The stadium's completed.
they just need to find a way to remove all of this sort of tangle of financial problem. It's not a problem. It's just unclear. It's a lack of clarity, I think.
Yeah, and that lack of clarity has been hanging over the football club for too long, really. I think Sean Dyche did a brilliant job last season to shut out the noise of all the off-the-pitch uncertainty. Would they be deducted points? How many points would they get back on appeal? And in the end, they stayed in the Premier League with relative ease. So credit to him for that. But I think in an ideal scenario, new owners are in for the start of the season and there will be that clarity. But of course, that won't happen now because it's July the 22nd. The new Premier League season starts in, 3 weeks' time? And the way the process works of a change of ownership...
Don't get it's 4 weeks' time, yeah. Careful.
It still won't happen because it takes at least 6 weeks, if not longer, for the Premier League to actually ratify any potential new owner or even a majority shareholder with their new, more stringent owners and directors test. I think in Bournemouth's case, when Bill Foley came in, it took about 3 months. So the uncertainty will continue, but they have been active in the transfer market in terms of bringing players in and selling players as well. We expect Amadou Onana to complete his move to Aston Villa this week, and that means they're not under pressure to sell Jarrad Branthwaite to Manchester United.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because Everton are actually keen to point out their day-to-day running costs are unaffected, really, because their financial position is better than what has been for a while, because arguably they've sold £70 million worth of talent. They've sold 2 younger players, Lewis Dobbin amongst those. Ben Godfrey's gone off to Italy as well, and they've now they're on the verge of selling Amadou Onana for £50 million to Aston Villa. Had a medical yesterday. It's still a mess, and there's no clear way of seeing through it. Short term, I think they're going to be okay, but it's just the longer term vision, the longer term certainty, the lack of that, which I think has just come back into the picture again. And as I said, they're not in crisis; they're just back at square one.
Yeah, and there's a frustration. There's a frustration amongst the fans. I'm sure there's a frustration among Sean Dyche and the players, and there's a frustration among the good people who work at Everton. It is a fantastic football club, and the sooner that they can find a new owner and a reputable one as well, because let's be honest, we spoke about this a lot on the Premier League All Access podcast. The 777 takeover was never going to happen. They were never going to pass that owners and directors test, and I think Moshiri was just kicking the can down the road all the time he was in negotiations with them.
It was a waste of time. It was like, hanging on to your presidential nomination when you know you're going to be replaced right at the very end anyway. Actually, it's worth pointing out about Branthwaite, not for sale. But I do get the sort of the vibe that if someone came in with a ridiculous amount of money, they would take a hefty fee for him.
But that will only be Manchester United, and they're not going to pay £70 million.
Well, that ain't going to happen.
Any other clubs at the table?
Everton aren't going to take anything more than a huge amount of money to price Branthwaite away. And he only signed. I know there's a lot of talk about him possibly signing a new contract, but he only signed a brand new contract 8 months ago, a 5-year contract 8 months ago. So they've protected his value already. And as I understand it, there is no further plans to offer him a new contract at this stage. I think they feel as if they've already done that.
I guess the only issue they've got is what kind of a lad is he? Is he the type of lad who's going to have his head turned by interest from Manchester United? Because we know that personal terms were pretty much in place between Branthwaite's advisors and United. So clearly at one stage United were fairly confident this deal would get done. Is he the type of guy who's just going to knuckle down and think, well, if I play well again this season, maybe there will be more suitors?
He's still only young, and he's got a long career ahead of him. The big moves will come when the time is right, I think.
Yeah, and I think you can see why United were trying to get this deal done now, why there weren't that many other clubs, if any other clubs at the table, because if he does have another really good year for Everton, then maybe the landscape will be a lot different next summer, and it won't be the free hit that United seem to have this time around.
Breaking news for you, reaching us in the last few minutes, and it comes from the Champions League, because Rangers have been drawn to face either FC Dinamo Kiev or FK Partizan Belgrade in the Champions League third qualifying round. The ties will take place on the 6th or 7th of August and 13th of August. It's the third qualifying round for the Champions League. It is the one round that is required to go. I think it's going to the playoff round, isn't it? And then you get into the Champions League group stages. So Rangers will face either Dinamo Kiev or FK Partizan in order to get through to the Champions League. Next, we're going to be looking ahead to the Olympics. You got your Olympics tickets, only across the water. You're going to go for that?
I'm actually on holiday during the Olympics.
Are you? For the whole thing?
I should be watching from the Algarve.
That's not true. It starts Wednesday. The football starts, and you're not away till Thursday. Then you come back on Monday. You've got a whole week next week when you could be going to the Olympics.
It's Glorious Goodwood, which is the Olympics of horse racing.
Ah, right. So Glorious Goodwood's more important to you than the Olympics.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.